You've seen the work we put in and day out, challenging myths, debunking old wives' tales, and exposing poor breeding practices. Ugh. We spent years researching, studying, and applying real-world experiences to perfect the art of science of breeding. Why? Because you deserve the best, most accurate information out there. But to keep this mission alive and growing, we need your support. If you found value in the Bred to Perfection live show, take a moment, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and share our content. It may seem small, but every like, every subscriber, and every share helps us reach more breeders who need to hear the truth, who want to learn what it really takes to create, maintain, and improve high-quality strains. This isn't just a YouTube channel, it's a movement, and you're a vital part of it. If you believe in what we're doing, if you want to help others discover the power of true breeding, help push this channel to the top. Like, subscribe, and share. Together, we make a difference. Thank you for standing with us. Now, let's get to work. Entertaining, informative, and educational. Inspiring content that makes a difference.
This is the Maximus Troy Publications Broadcasting Network.
Join the Academy. This show is brought to you by the Breeders Academy, where we will help you to increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and help you to improve the quality and performance of your fowl.
As a member, I'll provide you a roadmap that you will need to create a true family or strain. Starting with a cock from one breeder and a hen from another breeder, no problem. We can help you to turn your flock of hybrid crosses or mongrels into a pure family or strain, and show you how to continually improve that strain each generation. We'll start by showing you how to select your seed fowl and how to turn that seed fowl into a high-quality foundation strain. Our proven breeding programs and specialty courses are designed to take you step by step through the breeding process. And best of all, I'll be there to help you every step of the way.
We urge you to check it out. You have nothing to lose, and you can cancel at any time. You also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Simply go to www.breedersacademy.com to sign up.
The Breeders Academy will not only change the way you think about breeding, but improve the way you breed your fowl.
Oh, brother, wall-to-wall chickens.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Bred to Perfection. I'm Kenny Troiano, founder of the Breeders Academy, and I'm here with my wife Nancy, and our guest is Don Schrider. What's up, Don?
Hey, hello, everybody.
It's nice to have you back. It's been like I think we were talking about it was like 4 or 5 years since you've been on the show, but your episodes are still some of the highest rated shows that we have. So
Check this out. Sue says, been looking forward to hearing Don again. I've listened to the 3 segments pods a dozen times. So informative. You've got fan base in here.
Yeah, don't forget it's the Buckeye Recovery Project that we talked about too, and we also did one with Danny Feathers, which was a really good one too. For those who don't know Don, he was a major part of the Buckeye Recovery Project. He's a master breeder of brown leghorns. He also wrote a book called Story's Guide to Raising Turkeys. Just go to Amazon.com. You can get it there. And welcome back. This is awesome.
All right. But today we're not going to talk about turkeys in particular, though keep in mind we're focused on chickens today, but these a lot of this selection will also work for turkeys and other birds.
Yeah. Basically, what I'd like to talk about is, how to improve your laying strain, how to, like, if you have an established family, ways of improving them, or maybe even have ways of creating a new strain. But Don has all kinds of topics that he wants to cover. I created a really bitchin' outline, and I disseminated it and crapped all over it as soon as we got in. Him and I started talking about it, so I had to start changing some things. So for the most part, I'm going to follow Don's lead, and Nancy and I will ask questions, and then I may reel them back now and then back to the outline. So where do you want to start exactly? Do you know?
Well, let's start with more or less jungle fowl, I guess.
Okay.
So the ancestor of chickens is a seasonal layer. They lay clutches of eggs. And if we understand a little bit about this, maybe we can also understand a little better how to get higher egg production. So, to start with, you have your jungle fowl laying a clutch of eggs, going broody, setting on them, hatching chicks, or something gets the clutch of eggs, laying another clutch eggs a week or two later, and starting again. You'll see this in a lot of game fowl where they don't lay all year long. And when they lay heavily for a week or two, and then they sort of slack off for a week, and then they lay heavily again. So you could have, for instance, modern game bantams. You look at their bodies, and they're not really built for high egg production in the same way as, say, leghorns. That uh, brown leghorns being God's favorite chicken, by the way. Always got to toss that in there.
I don't know. American games are pretty cool, so.
It might be his other favorite, but anyway, but you could see the capacity for the organs is different. So you start out with clutches of eggs, and in the U.S. in the early 1800s, there's a lot of chickens coming from all over the world, but by the early 1900s, the USDA surveys uh, had hens at about 83 eggs a year on average for the farm flocks in the U.S. And into this mix comes a guy who was in the textile industry. He worked with machines that made big sheets of fabric. And he had very sensitive fingers because he had to test the fabric to see if the threads were coming out, making a nice, even, smooth appearance instead of having lumps periodically. And this is Walter Hogan. And Hogan had a flock of white leghorn hens at home, and he started feeling the hens' skin and all while they were in production, while they were out, and started noticing differences. And what Hogan was noticing um, was that the hens that were better producers had thinner, smoother, velvety like skin on their body, and their combs and would of course get elongated, their wattles elongated, and they were also very smooth and not coarse and rough in feeling and texture. And that really kind of started people into looking at their chickens. So a chicken lays an egg by some sunlight stimulating the chicken, and that causes the pituitary gland to start to produce hormones, and then the hormones spread all throughout the body. Now, everybody thinks of it as from the hen side, but this is also true of the males. The sunlight stimulating the pituitary gland causes hormone production in the male as well, and thus sperm production in his case, as opposed to egg production in the hen. So, sunlight's very critical, and what you're looking for ideally is, they say, 14 to 17 hours of light per day. That gives you maximum stimulation. So, uh, in this, hen whose hormones are running through her body it causes all the soft tissues to elongate and soften, and stretch and become elastic like in nature. And that in the back end of the chicken is where the egg organs will be. And that'll spread, which will cause the keel bone, which is the bone on the underside of the chicken, for those that don't know, um, to separate from the two pelvic bones, which there's two lateral process bones along the side of the chicken that come out right near the vent. You can feel them there, but those two bones will get a little bit wider apart, while the keel and the two pelvic bones will separate, and that from the swelling of the egg organs. And so um, everybody here, of course, knows how to tell a hen that's in egg production and a hen that's not producing any eggs, right?
Tell some that don't. Go ahead and tell them just in case they don't. So,
All right. So the first thing we look at is the vent. The vent should be wide and moist. If it's small and shriveled and tight, there's no eggs coming out. Next, we'll look at the abdomen, which is the area below the two pelvic bones and above the keel bone. And what'll happen is you tap that area, it should feel soft and pliable. And then the skin of the chicken, if you pinch any of the skin of the abdomen there, it should be elastic in nature. And it should feel velvety smooth once you get below the feathers, that is. So that's a good indicator. Now, on some breeds like a Leghorn, the comb will be big and lopped over. The wattles will get loose and floppy. In some breeds, the combs are a little smaller, but the comb should be red, or if it's been in production for a long time, it will get pale as the chicken puts everything into the eggs. But so when you go out and you look at your chicken, another thing you can look at, if your breed has yellow pigment in it, so Leghorn is a good example of this. Plymouth Rock would be another. It will start to lose pigment during egg production because it's putting the nutrients it would be uploading to keep its pigment rich, it's now putting into egg yolks. And as it gets, if the feed doesn't have enough, it's going to pull it from its body and put into that egg yolk because it's trying to reproduce. You could essentially say a chicken is an animal that's giving birth most of the year between the
that's good.
hormones and stuff. And
Yeah.
that would be pretty accurate. But let's see, I got a little note. All right. But back to the pigment loss. The order in which a chicken will lose its yellow pigment would be first around the vent. Next, it would lose it around the eye ring, right around the eye, the earlobes, and then the beak, starting at the mouth, going out to the tip, and then finally the shanks and toes will bleach out. Usually the front of the shanks before the back of the shanks. Basically, it's also connected to circulatory issues. So the areas that get a little more circulation will lose it first. Because it's just like having a pile of wood, you get the stuff that's at the front, you get the back stuff when you get that far into the pile. So anyway, so that give you some ideas of things to look at. But Hogan started noticing these things, and he started putting on his hands on the chickens and finding these qualities that showed the hormone levels were high. And he also was able to correlate the distance between some of the spreads that happened. So the spread between the two pelvic bones and the keel bone, as that widens up, he could correlate that in part with the egg production. And then also the spread between the two pelvic bones, it gets a little bit wider during egg production. And lastly, he realized that there are beef cattle and dairy cattle. So there should be beef chickens and dairy chickens, right? Or that is egg producers. And he thought, well, if a beef cow eats a whole bunch of feed, where does it put it? It puts it into meat and fat. If a dairy cow eats a whole lot of feed and it looks skinny, it's putting it into milk production. So chicken should be the same way. But a chicken's back is fused, so it doesn't lay fat on either side of the spine like four-footed animals will do. So anybody that's gotten into sheep or cattle for a while knows, or even your pet dog, if you feel their back, if they're thin, the spine feels like a mountain. And then if they're kind of moderate or maybe in better shape, you feel little tiny bumps there, like little hills. Or if they're fat, you feel a valley where their spine should be because the fat has grown over top of the spine. But chickens, you have a spine, but it's fused with some muscle. It doesn't really lay a lot of fat on there. Instead, what you have are the two pelvic bones. They're actually turned this way. And Hogan realized that he could feel the tip of the pelvic bone and appraise the thickness of it. So, a good chicken that's in really good condition and should be able to lay eggs, if you squeeze one of the pelvic bones together, it should only feel like it's about a quarter of an inch thick. A bird in really high egg production is going to feel like an eighth or a sixth, even a 16th. At a 16th, your birds needs some fattening feed. It's putting too much out. But a chicken that feels, I felt one as much as three-quarters of an inch thick,
Really?
squeezing it.
Wow.
That chicken was not laying eggs, and she was eating, and her whole internal cavities stuffed with fat.
Oh,
But if you wanted fat, that was a good chicken to eat. But if you go through your flock, sometimes your older hens won't be laying. They'll be bright red in the face, but they won't be laying, and you feel three-quarters of an inch of fat. She's eating too much, and you're going to have to thin down her diet
Yeah.
if you want to get her into egg production.
yeah.
And as you've had Jeff on here before talking about nutrition, but generally, anytime you need to make a change, it's a 3 to 4 week minimum to see the impact. So,
Yeah.
best to check these things out early in the breeding season.
Yeah.
But that
go
gives
ahead.
us a little start into it.
You
But
want to talk
Hogan's,
about this? Oh, go ahead.
well, I would say that Hogan's ideas by 1910 through 1920 were embraced to the point where the government had a poultry train that went around rural America teaching them how to hands-on appraise the birds. Now, Hogan could tell you how many eggs that hen would lay within a year. He did it many times. A lot of people called him a charlatan for it because he couldn't believe he was accurate. But whether he was accurate about that or not, he was right about the hands-on appraisal. And the egg production in 1910 went from about 83 eggs per year, and it more than doubled by 1920. And of course, then into the 20s, then we start having 200 egger hens being created up into the high 200s. And by the 30s, we had 300 egg layers.
Was that due to the difference in breeds or just in the selection of the breed themselves? Were they always using a Leghorn type breed back then, or when did that start?
Well, yeah. So the national average egg production was across all breeds. That was just something provided by your local farm bureau. Um, but as far as the focus on egg production, the Leghorns were embraced early on, and they were embraced for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're smaller and lightweight, so they take up less space. Number two, for the amount of food they put out, compared to the eggs they put out, it's very economical. Number three, I guess, they also don't go broody very often. Now, those of us that raise them and show them and keep some of the old lines know that you do periodically get some that go broody, but in commercial settings, that's totally frowned upon. So that's not a trait they perpetuate.
Yeah, until I met you, I never knew a Leghorn went broody ever.
Mm.
And I was
That's-
asking Don earlier in the show or in the back room, has he ever considered perpetuating that trait, getting them to the point where they're all broody? I don't think his customers would appreciate that for one thing. So
Yeah, it could be a mixed bag. That could go either way, you know.
yeah,
Everybody's got their own opinion of what's right, but I get a large fowl hen, maybe 1 out of 20 every other year or something like that, go broody, and every now and then I'll let them set on eggs. Some lines were and varieties were more prone to it. I had silver leghorns years ago,
oh wow,
and those hens like 100% went broody. Um, but a buddy of mine once said if Wells Lafon, he said it's like a disease, and if you let one hatch a brood of chicks, the pullets from that will tend to want to hatch, almost like it's a learned behavior. So uh, I still mine don't go broody very often, and I manage things. I have limited number of pens, so putting a hen aside with chicks sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But with my bantams, they do very
yeah,
frequently go broody, and I usually raise at least one batch of chicks a year.
yeah. I was telling Don that's one of the biggest attractions for me was. I mean, I'm a rooster guy and everything, and I love a beautiful rooster. But having hens with baby chicks, that's Nancy. I
Yeah.
gravitate to that. I love it. And I was telling him all my shelves here are full of hens with baby chicks, little statues, whatever. And anytime I see that, that's what I gravitate towards. So yeah, I don't know if I could raise a breed that didn't hatch and raise their own chicks. That's just me though. Yeah.
Well, I like a hen with chicks too, except the first couple of days. Anybody that's had a leghorn that does go broody knows that she'll kill you the first couple of days to
Take your arm
protect
off.
those
Yeah.
babies. But
So
yeah, you got to wear gloves or something. She, watch your eyes and face. Don't stick it in the nest box to see the chick.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, they're all cute till they're not. But anyway, but so as 20s came out, people were really trying to do more and more. There was a lot of science being applied into chicken breeding. The government was funding it. We had departments of poultry. People like Morley Jules started writing down the results of different studies that were done. There were egg laying contests and some guys that were making complete leaven. You know, you come out of the depression and you happen to be a poultry breeder. Next thing you know, you can afford a house and a small farm. And how are you making that? You're selling chicks, eggs, and breeding eggs, as well as eating eggs. And maybe in the fall, selling breeding stock, and for pretty decent numbers relative to what things cost. So there's all these wonderful old things. If you get into collecting poultry paraphernalia, old magazines and books and stuff, unfortunately, there's all these wonderful pictures of people that have these big spreads that the chickens paid for. And you look at things like that and you're like, wow, I
Those
would
were the
love to.
days, huh?
Yeah, let me move right into that. You know,
Yeah.
big yards and stuff for the birds. Yeah, it's great stuff. But as this is all going on, um, we have some guys that get into it and, like I say, try to put science behind it. They try different breeding methods and such. Um, and one of the things that happened was up to this point, all breeding was really focused on individual merit and also superior birds. So if I have, 20 hens and five of them outperform all the rest, I focus on those five and their male relatives and or what I think fits the ideal. Um, Now, at that point, we were still breeding both the idea of trying to be productive and beautiful, and of course, you had the American Poultry Association in there trying to organize things so that people could have breeds that in California or West Virginia or Massachusetts all look relatively the same, easily identifiable as a breed. Plus, there were a lot of hucksters back then that would just cross a few things and swear they had these for 20 years or more.
That happens still, by the way.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
noticed that. There's even people that bring stuff in from other countries and then
Yeah.
label it as rare and put a big price tag on it.
Yeah.
But it's all chickens, so it can't be totally bad. But anyhow,
But it seems like the American Poultry Association and the Standard Perfection, they went from a very high utility type bird to a pretty bird, and they don't concentrate on the utility part anymore because of Cornish crosses and the hybrid leghorn. Seems like they moved away from the utility side of it.
yeah. Well, you say that, and I won't say there's not truth to what you say because think there is some truth to it, but I don't think it's a wholehearted effort. So, with my effort with the Buckeyes, part of what I did was use some of there's in the early part of the standard, there's a couple of pictures. One of a Plymouth Rock with and without feathers, a good and a bad one, from above, and a leghorn from the side, good and bad, with and without feathers. So that is, half the bird has feathers, half doesn't. And these are artistic renderings using photographs, so they're pretty good. They weren't a chicken plucked halfway, for those worried about that. Um, but there was also a written description, and the judges were to give prominence to selection for the utility characteristics of the breed. So a Leghorn hen that doesn't have any capacity in the back end and when we talk about capacity, so when a chicken's hormones are up, on a hen, if you look at her side profile, it should not be a rectangle. The top and bottom lines should not be parallel. The bottom line should go lower towards the back of the bird. That's where the egg organs are. And if you've got a great show leghorn female that hasn't quite laid her first egg yet, she's probably not going to be there. Or if you got a high producing old hen, she's going to look almost dumpy in the back end during her peak lay. So, yeah, there's some things about exhibiting the bird and when to exhibit the bird that would come into play. But the APA's idea that the utilities should be important because all of them should still be useful hasn't completely left the standard. And there are a number of breeders that have impacted me over the years, like Jim Fagan out of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. We had a couple of times we had great conversations about it, but he ate his own chickens. And at that time, he was working with Australorps. But yeah, so if your bird's Clell Agler, there's another one. Clell, who had white leghorns when he passed last year, but in years past he had light browns, and actually some of his breeding when he got out of light browns ended up in the hands of people that I got birds from. So some of my bloodline goes back through Clell. But Clell once came to me. We were talking about chickens, and he said he had a piece of advice for me. And I said, "What is it?" He says, "If they don't lay, they're not leghorns, and get rid of them." He says, "Because once you lose the egg production, you don't get it back."
Yeah.
And so mine lay pretty well. I've always been happy with them, but they're not 300 egg layers. I focus on a lot of different traits. They probably about 200. Maybe some of the birds will go 225 or so. Maybe might once in a while. I think I've got one that would probably go 250 if I measured it. Um, and that's another thing we should bring up. How do you measure egg production?
Sure.
Because the industry right now, uh, for them, not the hatchery industry, but the commercial industry, it's not about how many eggs in a 1 year period can a chicken lay, but how long that period will last from the time of first egg until the time the female stops. Now, in the past, it was a simple measurement. how many eggs in a year or in a period of time. And so you go out and collect the eggs. Well, if you got a flock of 200 hens, how do you find out which ones lay more than the others? Walter Hogan had a solution, but not everybody could master it to the point where they could tell number of eggs per hen and be accurate. They could just tell that the whole flock was productive.
Just so
But
everybody knows, I'm sorry, Don.
yeah, go ahead.
If you want to learn more about the Hogan Method, just get the book called Call of the Hen. I don't know if it's available on Amazon as a paperback yet, but you might be able to find it on eBay. But I have like 3 of them laying around here. This is a really good book. Don and I were flashing books at each other in the beginning. It's like this
Call
book,
of
yeah.
Hens.
He's got the Hagdorn books, is that like I do, the Jewel books, the whole bit. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
he's talking about all my
Yeah.
favorite authors. This is really cool.
Hagdorn.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I got about half a dozen of his books. He doesn't just do chickens; he does livestock too. Okay, sorry about that, Don. I wanted to make sure everybody knew about that.
No, good. Fit that in there. Yeah, but so Walter Hogan kind of really started things, and even today, if you do hands-on appraisal of birds, a lot of his methods are still in there. But as things started to come out, we started trying to find ways to measure which are your better birds, and some of what's came in there was the mighty trap nest. So now, serious show breeders like myself we'll have pens of birds, and in some cases we'll have one hen to one male or one hen in a pen and rotate the males. Some game guys will rotate the females into the male, but keep them separate. Um, but if you have the ability to know how many eggs that one female lays, you can document it. That's pretty easy. Or if you have sisters that are the same age, all in a pen, you could keep track of the pen's number of eggs and just get an average per female. But if you want to know the individual bird, now you got a trap nest if you've got a flock. And trap nests are wonderful in that the bird goes in, lays an egg, it can't get out. The farmer or attendant has to come along, take the bird out, record its leg number, maybe on the egg or in a chart to keep track of it, and you keep going, and then you can find your bigger breeders or the ones that will lay more eggs. But this is all still based on the idea of finding individuals that are superior. What really changed by the time Hagdorn came in was the idea he brought wheat type breeding techniques, or that is grain breeding techniques, and where you'd plant a whole field, either the field was good enough to use as seed or another field was good enough to use as seed, and the other got turned into bread. But so with that, with chickens, what he would do is he'd take a whole family of birds and record an average for them, take another whole family, have another whole family, and then look for the family that outproduced the other families.
Now you're telling me that Hagdorn's more not so much about the individual birds, but he's more about the family itself, right?
Yes. When it came to, he introduced those techniques to poultry breeding. Now, that didn't mean that the individual bird wasn't important.
Right.
Still. But in fact, Hagdorn would tell you that it was better to buy a small pen of high quality females to start your flock than to buy hundreds of medium quality females. That within 3 years you would overrun number of eggs, starting with better females anyway.
Yeah.
And so, yes, he still believed there was advantage to some of the individuals, but he felt the whole family had to be measured as a whole, as a one unit. And what we're talking about there goes back to some traits that I've got in my turkey book, but the tests, you got your ancestry. So what were the ancestors like? If you know what they're like for egg production, what was the mother like of the sire? What was the sisters like of the sire? Then you get some idea. One fellow that was very preeminent and some of this was Everlay Farm. Um, he had leghorns that he entered the males in Madison Square Garden show in the fall as a regular poultry show. The females were in egg laying contests. And he was a very serious leghorn breeder, and did great. And the thing was, his males were from high egg laying females. Period. The end. That's all he did. He did both. So it's possible to put a good bit of emphasis on both. Um, but Hagdorn comes in and he really starts getting people to look at the whole group. And that allowed for some advances that I think the individual didn't, because what it accounts for are in the whole family, you really see by measuring a whole family, what you really see are the results of the genes that the family itself contains. Okay, so we're going back. There's no machine that can measure genes or anything. We have some idea that when we cross this and cross that, we're just getting the beginnings of our genetic knowledge with poultry. But what Hagdorn was pointing out was that by looking at this, if the whole family predominantly has these 5 traits show up in every individual, they're going to show up in the offspring. Whereas another family, maybe only 50% of them have the traits. And what do we got there? We probably got some heterozosity, if I could say it that way.
Let's go with
Need
it.
Nancy to save me on that one.
There's no way I'm going to save you on that one. Heterogynocity. I can never get those ones right. And don't even ask me to say sessional.
I usually
can
stick
never
with the
see-
short versions of it unless
Yeah.
I'm writing.
Heterozygotes. How about that? Let's go with
Yeah.
that.
But so you see, by looking at the whole family, you have a better idea of the genes and maybe the negative genes that are in there. You know, a lot of your disqualifications and defects will pop up as maybe like a hidden recessive, that
Especially
has
if you
to
inbreed
combine
them.
together, right?
Especially if you inbreed them, you're going to really
Yeah.
find out what's in them. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, so that idea starts to enter into the commercial industry. But after World War II, there's some interesting things that go on. And I've got a little note here. I want to make sure I get this out correctly, because this one's pretty good. So Monroe Babcock, when I was getting into poultry, Monroe Babcock was retired and he was writing articles into Poultry Press. And who is Monroe Babcock? Well, he is the man that created the Babcock B2000 commercial egg layer, and one of the most widely distributed egg layers around. And so this guy knew egg production inside and out. In fact, he had a little thing he liked to save eggs. He liked to immediately collect the eggs, put them inside of a sealed container, like, say, a cooler, so that they did not lose very much moisture. And then he would gather all the eggs up into a big clutch. He actually had special boxes made for his egg storage, but you could use a cooler at home. And then he would set the eggs, and they all would have lost the same amount or relatively close to the same amount of moisture. So therefore, the chicks would hatch more uniformly. So he was looking at a lot of little things,
Wow.
but he had breakfast with E.B. Parmenter. And at the time, E.B. Parmenter had the world's most productive flock of egg layers. He was world famous, and he was from Franklin, Massachusetts. And Parmenter shared with Monroe Babcock that what you should do is select hens that lay before 10 a.m. to move your egg production higher. And you're wondering why, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why does it matter about 10 o'clock in the morning? Does the chicken know what time it is? But here's why it matters, okay? Your chickens stimulated by sunlight and all, and the natural egg cycle is about a 26-hour period. Okay, so a hen that lays, and the first egg will usually come in the morning. All right. And as the hen lays, the egg comes about 2 hours later every day until it hits the afternoon. And then the hen will stop. She'll take a day or so off, and then she'll cycle back in and start it in the morning again. And so Pimentor had noticed this cycle of eggs and paying attention to some individual hens. Um, but what he realized was that some hens would come back into egg production faster than others, and those hens less than 26 hours, and those hens will tend to lay before 10 a.m. So if you figure sun up at 6 a.m., 10 a.m., that gives you a 4 hour window for the hen if she's going to lay every day in that, or most days in that period of time. Now suddenly you got a hen that's laying less than 26 hours. And so that's why that comes in. He also um, said that persistency of egg laying, that is the ability to keep laying eggs and laying over a longer period of time, um, you could find persistency in hens that lay fall through June without molting. So if you've got a hen in the beginning of June that's got some new feathers in her body, she's probably slacked off of egg production. Whereas another hen that has laid consistently all the way through to June or even a little later, and hasn't started changing any feathers, is more likely to show persistency of lay. And then the other thing he had was you don't want, you remove any of the eggs that are under 54 grams of weight or over 68. Hen that lays over 68 tends not to lay as many. Hen under 54, not really the ideal egg size. So he also removed any round or pointed eggs. So this is all from Pimentor, or through Babcock from Pimentor.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how Babcock kind of suddenly shoots out as being the B2000 being a premier egg laying strain.
So,
Yeah,
so
go
by
ahead.
slowly selecting for these traits, he improved the whole family that he had, and then
Yeah.
okay.
Now, notice something about this. All right. Pimentor did not use the trap nest. Okay. And at his time, he set world records for egg production for the whole flock, for flocks, not just individuals, but for whole flocks. So these are I I see on some sites I see a lot of argument about how people in poultry fancy get all hung up on the past, and they don't go with enough modern science. And modern science is nice and all, and there's plenty of useful stuff, especially color genetics, that has been coming out. Um, but these guys back in the early 1900s didn't have access to that. What they had access to was observation. And more often than not, some of this observation is eminently useful for people that have backyard flocks. You don't have Caltech to come down to your place and measure all your chickens for you. You should be out there doing it. But they didn't just toss feed in the pen and walk away. Okay, they observed the birds, their behaviors, and things like that. And that's really, I think, one of the important things that today people that want to breed and want to do really well should focus on, is noticing things. And it just comes, at first, you don't have to notice anything, you just have to spend time with the birds. All right. And then maybe it's just the friendly nature. I've got Bantam leghorns, my mentor's line of Bantam dark browns, and oh, the females can be gorgeous, but when I take them to the show, they pinch up, or you put them in a cage next to a male, they pinch up, and it's been driving me nuts for decades. You got this hen at home walking around, she's $1 million, she could do something, but you take her to the show, she can't. And then now I've got this one little chicken. Every time I open the pen, she comes. I have these little kickboards so they can't kick the shavings out. She comes over and hops up on it. This is a leghorn. It's supposed to be wild and afraid, right? But she's not.
Those will make
So
good showbirds. The
yeah.
ones
So
that
now
tame, yeah.
So a little observation like that change in temperament starts to show you, like you say, that you got potential showbird there.
Yeah.
Now, for egg production, is a high egg production bird active or not? Well, for most breeds, they'll be very active. In fact, they'll be the first hens out of the coop in the morning. They come off the nest hungry. They want to get something to eat. Egg production draws on their bodies. Now, there are commercial breeds out there that are low energy production breeds to try to keep feed costs down and yet get high egg production. But in all your older breeds of chicken, this you have to measure it relatively apples to apples. I think I told the story about when I tried to Jersey Giants. Thought maybe I always admired the breed. I thought maybe they'd be a breed for me besides my Leghorns. And I opened up the door to my hens, and the Leghorns come running and flying out. They leap and jump around and race, 50 feet away. And then after they're all out, the Jersey Giants came out, hopped down, looked up at me. And I'm like, oh my God, are you even alive? Where's the joy? That's when I found out Jersey Giants weren't my cup of tea. I still admire them. Those guys that raise them and gals, thumbs up, but not for me.
Yeah.
But if I measure the activity level of that Jersey Giant to my Leghorn's always going to win,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And my Leghorns lay well, but maybe that Jersey Giant lays well. You got to measure her compared to the other Jersey Giant hens.
Yeah.
And same thing with the capacity. Jersey Giant's a big chicken. My Leghorn, a high producing brown Leghorn in my flock, will go from the Hogan method, where you use your fingers to go between the two pelvic bones and the keel bone, put your fingers in this way, 6.5 fingers.
Whoa.
The Jersey Giant, it might be 6 fingers when she's not laying. She's so big. So it's, you got to compare apples and apples.
Yeah.
Not apples and oranges or apples and grapes. They're different. But anyway, so yeah. Observation can make a huge impact on it. Now, we were talking earlier, and I said I wanted to mention some stuff that can impact egg production.
Sure.
So if I'm going to measure eggs, let's say I say my birds lay 200 eggs per year, and you get them, Kenny, and you can't get more than 150 out of them. Why is that?
My guess would be epigenetics.
The genetics?
The epigenetics. Something happened.
Yes.
My area is different than yours, and they reacted to. Now, the birds I would have got from you directly, I wouldn't affect them. So you may be talking about something else, but anything I hatch from them would eventually change to match my area, my environment. So what would change them? What would you think change them?
Well,
if it wasn't
some other things to look at will be, feed quality, right? So like, some of us go to the feed store and read the label to find out how old the feed is before we pay $25 for a bag or whatever, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
I know you've promoted that for a while, but some people don't. They grab the first bag of feed and they got their bag of feed. Go get the next thing. I remember the beginning of this year. I think it was February. I saw a bag from 2025 at Tractor Supply uh, from the 230th day of the year, still there. And I was like, no way.
Yeah, I've seen it too. I've seen bags that look like I think they were there a year. They just didn't
Yeah.
rotate the bags,
And
you know,
obviously there, yeah, somebody just kept throwing bags on
on
top. So
top.
they
Yeah.
probably had somebody that hadn't done it very long. Because,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
anybody that knows what they're doing with feed bags knows you got to pull the old ones out, put the new ones in, put the old ones on top. And that's how
Yeah.
you do it. And then if you do that, that rotation works. But I did find one like that. Sorry, Tractor Supply.
Well, let me tell
Um,
you what I had to do, and I've done it a number of times, and Nancy just cringes. Is
No,
I'll walk
not
in the feed
anymore.
store. Yeah, I walk in the feed store, and I'll look at the tags. I go, "You see the ones on the bottom? The stacks this high. See the ones on the bottom? That's what I want." And they have to move the whole stack to get to the ones I want. I've done that a number of
oh,
times. Yeah, that's how fresh I want them.
but so feed, the freshness of the feed could be the difference. It could be the same brand of feed, different
Yeah,
part of the country. Could be a different mill that milled my bag of feed versus your bag of feed. Then we talk about the amount of light. Well, you're in sunny California, but maybe you put them in a dark pen and they don't get enough hours of sunlight. Then could be the organisms in the soil that they're challenged by for sometimes 3 years or three generations. Sometimes there's an East Coast, West Coast thing where the birds do better for a couple years after the first year or two, where they just had different organisms that they get exposed to. Could be different strains of coccidioids or whatever.
yeah.
Um,
Let me say this real quick. You're kind of laying out what we call our three-legged stool, and it's environment management, nutrition, and healthcare, or the health of the bird, and then genetics in your selection. And some
right.
of it's you, and some of it's epigenetics, but it all determines how your birds do when they're brought from one location to the next. Because
Yeah.
eventually they will adapt. If you do certain things for a certain length of time, the birds on your farm, if you haven't changed the birds or you haven't changed anything you've done, they will eventually adapt because your selection, they'll get used to what you're doing, plus your selection, and then they just evolve and they adapt to the environment that they're in. But yeah, you're just laying out our three-legged stool, actually. So
Well,
Let
and
me
it is. So egg production can be a three-legged stool for sure. Now, another thing is, how do we calculate egg production? Touched on it before, but there are different methods, and the industry has used different methods over the years too. I knew a commercial egg laying guy. He retired and started showing poultry. Bill Shippers. He was wonderful. Really enjoyed chatting with him. But he used to have a thing where he would measure the egg production for the first week of the month and then just multiply that out. And there was another thing he said where um, they would measure egg production Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and times it by 1.75. And that's how they would calculate egg production. So there have been different methods over the years. And then when do you start? The very first egg the chicken lays, or do you wait till the egg size comes up and then start then? So we could all go into our backyards and start coming up with specific numbers on what our birds lay, but they're very specific to how we calculate that and how we manage our flocks, as well as the genetic package. So, and then we have the other thing which Hagdorn touched on, which is the value of the family as a measurement of the genetic package, right? So that means an individual of a high producing family might only lay, say, let's say she only lays 175 eggs a year if we go to the trouble of measuring it. She might produce a 280 egg layer. Why? Well, because there's maybe when she was growing up, she lacked nutrition at one critical stage and it stunted something inside of her. and she's been working on a handicap ever since, and you just don't know it. I mean, it's not like we could plug a computer into the individual bird. But this is another thing that's been well documented, that some hens that had fairly low egg production or moderate to low egg production can produce superior individuals. And that quality can continue onward, which means we're getting homogeneous in our gene pairings. So there are a lot of things about the individual production that don't necessarily matter. Did you get mites? Did you get lice in your birds? Did you change the water every day, once a week, or once every 2 weeks?
They need water? I thought you just did it once a year, you know?
Well, you got
Or
a
when they
point
get
there.
green enough, you
Mine
know?
drink a lot of water. They're always out of water when I go there. But they don't lay. Right. So there's a lot of things that can impact that. So you can get hung up on individual numbers about that. But you can do what some of the early egg producers did do. You can use your flock as a base, and if you want to increase your egg production, use sons of known higher egg producers bred back to other higher egg producers, and the sons of that bred across the flock. So you're just trying to get more of the gene pairs lined up identical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, speaking of which, I got one little blurb here I want to share about Don Schrider, who high egg production commercial birds. He recorded the productions of hens and half sisters for 40 weeks, whole bunches of groups of them. He kept the top 10%. Does that sound familiar? Families with the highest number of eggs as breeders. To use as males, this is an interesting thing he did. He used brothers of these females that made the top 10%, and then he pulled the semen and then artificially inseminated. And the reason he did that was to average out the males so that he wouldn't get skewed results of a low producer and a high producer. He felt it would be a more even, it would be a more even representation of what was behind all the males. And so that's how he did it. That's how he operated on his commercial egg line. So I thought that might be pretty useful for people to know. So now I've read while I was at the Livestock Conservancy and we did the Buckeye Project. Jeanette Behringer there, my protege, who's done really great things for that organization. I'm very proud of her. She encouraged me to start writing all this stuff down. And so we wrote 3 chapters documenting the methods that we were using to bring the Buckeyes back. And the first chapter, I had her name on first because I wouldn't written any of them if it wasn't for her. And then the other chapters have my name first and hers second. They still offer them for free download. Now they call themselves the Livestock Conservancy. And you go to their poultry page and it's the chicken manual. And you click on it and they ask an email to be able to download it. But it does have pictures showing you where to put your hands. In that, I've got a good number of little extra bits that we haven't covered yet. But what I want to put out is that the idea of the capacity of the chicken, when you put your hands on it, you've got the back of the chicken, how broad is it, as well as how long. You got the breast of the chicken, how much meat is on it for meat, but the back end, seeing how much room there is for the egg organs, how soft and pliable they are. You also have the heart girth, which is between the 2 wings. It's a little rib cage area. And if that's very, very narrow, that pushes the heart and lungs further back into the intestines and stomach and pushing those into the egg organs. So capacity of the chicken measured a number of different ways can impact your egg organs. You've got to have room, and chicken's got to have a good heart, got to have a good digestive system. So there's a case where A pullet could have had coccidiosis really bad as a chick, but survived. But because of that, her intestinal wall is damaged, so she can't uptake nutrients as easily as her sisters. She passes more of it on through her without uptaking it, and her egg production is a little lower because of it. But genetically, she's a winner. If it hadn't been for, maybe call it mismanagement, but it could just be a year where you had a bloom, conditions were just right and you're caught off guard. But I want to share a few tips. So let's see. All right. Molting. So one measure the person with a backyard flock can look at is how the hens and roosters molt. So do they drop all their feathers at once? Do they drop a few here and there over a long period of time? And what's interesting is that either can be ideal. So it used to be that the golden standard for egg production was a hen that dropped everything at once, looks like a pin cushion, and then grows them all back in and gets back to egg production. But that's also very hard on a body. So a chicken that's going to live a long time and do that as it gets older, that's much more stressful. So if she's still producing eggs into her old age, she might not make it out of the molt once she gets in it.
Yeah.
Now, the chicken that loses a few feathers here and there, that's long been associated with a chicken that doesn't lay well. She starts losing feathers, and it can take 8 to 10 weeks in a normal bird to get back into feathers and then start to get back into condition. Some birds will take 16 weeks or more to go through it. The biggest clue I can say for that is a bird that grows nearly all of her wing feathers at once, when she grows those back, is more likely a better producer, even though she didn't do the full pin cushion thing. So looking at the number of wing feathers, see if they come in at once or if they're spread all out. If they're spread all out, she's probably not your better layer. But hopefully you watch to make sure that's the case. Another thing is birds that lay early in the year when the days are shorter, especially if you don't have artificial lights on them. That is, so they got a reduced amount of sunlight and they still produce eggs. They tend to produce a higher number of eggs over the course of a year. So if I provide artificial light for my birds and they start up early, that's a better egg layer. If they start up in the winter and never quite stop, or maybe slow down and stop for a week or two and then start back up, that's a better egg layer. If I
Let
put
me
the
ask you
lights on,
okay,
they
go
think
ahead.
it's March or April.
So the commercial egg layer, are they laying through the molt too? Are they actually laying during the molt?
Yeah. So what they do is the industry controls the lighting entirely. And so they cycle them through a day to the new day in less than 24 hours. They give them a prescribed amount of light, a prescribed amount of rest, and then they start the lights back up. And over the course of time, they get more days in a week than their chicken thinks it's gone through more days in the week than we have. Um, a lot of the commercial industry birds, they want them to hold from the time they start laying in the fall. They want them to hold and lay for a little over like a year and a half, if they can. But it does vary a little bit. Now, it's been a while since I had a really good industry insider talking to me about the breeding of them. But from what I understand right now, they look for them to hold feather for a year and a half.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
now people always ask, when should chickens start laying? And the general answer is 6 months, but it's not accurate to every breed.
Yeah.
Some of them have bigger bodies to produce. Some of them are geared to partially towards meat or fully towards meat. So the egg production can vary on that. But at the same time, if I try to force my pullets to lay early, if I solely use the measure of when they start to lay as being the goal, what will happen is I will get smaller eggs and smaller chickens. So a good tend to be a better layer if they start at 180 to 215 eggs. 280 to 215 days lay their first egg from point of hatch to the laying. That seems to be a sweet spot. Um, Again, you don't want to force it too much. I will say that pullets that lay too early tend to lay smaller eggs, and egg size is set at February. So if you still got smaller eggs in February, that's what you're getting until they molt out and come back in as a hen. Um, First year hens that lay 25 or more eggs in August and March tend to be egg layers. So if you didn't want to put too much emphasis on counting eggs all year long, you could just do it in August and March. As long as now, if you have a dual purpose breed that goes broody in August, um, management, you got to be right on top of that. Like Buckeyes, Buckeyes can lay really well, but they like to brood. So as soon as you start hearing the clucking or a hen that doesn't want to leave the nest, you need a pen, like with rabbit wire on the bottom. No roost, or a roost is fine, but no nesting box in it. You put her on there, the cool air on the breast of the chicken will help turn that back around. Or you can put her in a pen with a male with no nesting box, a little small pen like a 4x4, and he'll keep her up on the roost most of the time. And the cool air again will dissuade her from egg production. And then if you catch it early enough, she'll only be out for 2-3 days, and
I
then you
got a
put her back.
question.
She'll be back into production.
I have a question. I hear some people say that that hens stop growing when they start laying eggs, and I don't see that on my farm. I see that. I know I raise American games, but my hens seem pretty. They still have a lot of time to grow when they actually start laying eggs. Now they're going to start laying smaller eggs in the beginning. By the time they get to a year old, they're pretty good size. But I still see growth. But there's some people saying that they stop growing once they start laying. What do you think about that?
Well, I'd walk you down to the chicken pens right now and show you that I've got hens that are a lot bigger than pullets. And so my experience is that what I think about it is that, of course, when they're laying eggs, their nutrition is largely gone to egg production. Okay, so if they're still growing, that will slow down their growth. And I do believe they do, but I do continue to grow.
I think so
And
too.
maybe it's hard to measure, but then when they hit their molt, if they're eating enough, they'll start to put on more size. But from my experience, my hens are hen size. And if you look at the APA standard, pullet weights and hen weights are two very different things
Yeah, because
for each breed.
my birds, like the cocks and the stags and the pullets,
Yeah.
I mean, they'll grow in size, height for, let's say, the first 6 to 10 months. Okay, then after that, then they really fill out. So to me, they're growing quite a bit. My pullets will start laying at 5 or 6 months easily,
Yeah.
but they're still growing. They're still even growing in height.
Yeah. You could stun them if you gave them lower quality feed.
No, I'm just talking about everything stays the same. You're not changing anything. Yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is that the person that's saying that they stopped growing might just be feeding them scratch feed. I was actually at a farm where all they fed the chickens was scratch feed, and those chickens were fully. They were supposed to be 16 weeks old, and I thought they were 8 weeks old. So I know it can make a huge impact.
Yeah.
Diet can. And Doug Akers, back when he was showing birds, he had all these photos, and he had a picture of two light brown pullets that were from the same hatch He'd given them to 4-Hers. He got the eggs in and gave them to 4-Hers, and the one bird was at least a third smaller than the other bird and wasn't mature yet. And whereas the bigger bird already had a lot comb and everything.
Yeah.
And the only difference wasn't genetics. It was just the care they received at the two different places.
Yeah.
So yeah. Now, another thing we talked about apples and oranges before, but if you're going to try to increase your egg production, you got to know how old each hen is. I can't compare a 5-year-old to a 2-year-old hen. Uh, first laying season pullet and then a first laying season as a hen. Those are some peak laying seasons. After that, chicken tends to drop egg production about 20% per year. And that will vary a little bit too. A lot of the like commercial hybrids, you get those sex links of various kinds. A lot of those tend to peter out by age 4, and each hen only has a certain number of eggs inside of her she's born with when she hatches, not born, but when she hatches, all the eggs she'll ever lay are already in her. And if she got poor nutrition, that could impact how many are already in there. But if she lays them all in the first 4 years of egg production, then what can she do after that? And some hens will lay pretty good. I mean, my birds, I was breeding from a 12-year-old hen a couple years ago, and this year I've got 2 sisters one's from 2017, one's from 2019. I've got other 2019 birds. I don't know if I have anything older than the 2017 right now. I'd have to look at each one's number, but I know the 2 of them in particular offhand. So there's a 9-year-old, and they're in my breeding pens.
Yeah.
So they lay pretty well. I get at least 5 or 6 really good years of egg production, and then they start down. So you could look at that too. There was a thing that Pioneer Farms, they had a white leghorn fame. Elia Marsh, a lawyer who also raised chickens up in New England, he was very big on the idea that the commercial industry, therefore, during his lifetime, were having a lot of disease issues that he wasn't having. And he believed that because they were trying to breed over 300 eggs per year, they should back down into the 200s. And his birds were in the 200s. Actually, the low 200s, I think is the way he wrote it. But and he thought that was the ideal spot for both health and egg production. So he was a master breeder, so I can only take his word at that. But I'm kind of in a similar situation. That seems to be where I aim most. But then again, if you aim to breed for color, type, size, comb, feather width, after a while, where you can only make an impact on so many things. If I go just for egg production, I'll lose type. And even our friend, Mr.
You're talking you're talking to someone here that it's about the complete package. I mean, I may have less birds to select from at the end, but I'm getting the best birds that are the closest to what I'm looking for. So I'm a complete package kind of guy, actually.
But he was saying that if you aim solely for production as your selection point, you will lose type invariably.
Yep.
If you're trying to maintain a particular, and like the American Games, their body stance is very, very standoutish. When I see one, you can tell.
Let me say this, that when it comes to American Games, I don't even think they're a breed yet. I still think they're a land race because most people aren't breeding for what I would call the complete package. They're breeding for one thing, and that's performance, and they neglect they neglect the rest of the bird. And you look on Facebook, you get all different sizes, shapes, height, you name it, and they just don't seem like a breed yet. So like Brian Reeder, him and I talk about all the time, that we don't think they're a breed. We think they're a land race because there's not very many good breeders actually breeding for true breed, finding birds that represent their breed, in breeding true to type, conformation, carriage station, and color. We just don't see very many of them.
Well, maybe I should say the better ones, but there are people out there that post pictures. For some reason, I keep being shown all these game pitch chicken short videos when I watch videos at night. I guess because I'm into chickens, and I watched a bunch of chicken videos. You know how that goes, but
Yeah.
I've been noticing there's this one particular body type of the top of the shoulders on down to the tail that to me
Like
seems
ACL, maybe
very distinct.
ACL. Yeah.
Um, but anyway, so yeah, but in Leghorns, I have there's a certain body type that works. Now, waterfowl, I'll bring that up real quick. There used to be a well-known thing that the body type gave you a good idea about egg production. So, for instance, your runner ducks that stand straight up lay a lot of eggs. And then as you start getting body type that comes down, you lay a lot of eggs, but not as many as these. And then when you get the ones that are dead level, you don't lay a lot of eggs.
You think gravity
And
has something to do with that? It just or
well, a lot of other
I'm just
things,
kidding, but I
selection
mean,
for
I'm
meat
just kidding.
qualities and body size and all too. But yeah, so you know, certainly body type can have a difference. So you take a Cornish,
Sure.
they're hugely broad in the shoulders and they taper back from above. They look like a heart. And they just don't have the back end a Leghorn does. Where I put my hands on my Leghorn, she should be a rectangle all the way through. Her lateral process bones should maintain the width all the way through her thighs. So, yeah, so capacity and the shape. In fact, in the Livestock Conservancy PDF I mentioned earlier that you can download, there's one of them has a picture of Ron Hodson's had a game hen and a picture of a Leghorn hen next to her, and you can see the difference in the back end of the bird in particular, and that impacts egg production.
Sure.
Now, I got something off our general subject. I do want people to know that uh, you can you can go out and apply some of these techniques. And if you want to see how to put your hands on, download the PDF, or maybe Kenny's got something he'll show. But people that want to talk about breeding, so I hear a lot of debates about it. You've got made a whole business out of trying to help people understand it, but people still don't understand it, and I still hear the debates. And they say that uh, that inbreeding is bad, and that you should never inbreed. And my mentor tended on his line of Bantam Leghorns, he tended to make distant cousin crosses. And his father would make half brother sister crosses when he outcrossed to something, and then make other stud matings where maybe a particular male's on for 3 generations or so. So what's two very different things from a father and son. But I find that the a good place to start is what is inbreeding. So I like an example of it, and this is one inbreeding. In inbreeding, the same ancestor appears on both the sire and dam side within the first 5 generations. And that's the definition of inbreeding. So a lot of people will use inbreeding meaning, like got a foot coming out of its eye or something. But you wonder why there's such a big difference. And my thing has been that there are only 2 forms of breeding. There's outbreeding and there's inbreeding. And that's where you start with it. And within inbreeding, you've got inbreeding and different levels of relationship, and you have line breeding with different levels. And then typically, line breeding, the animals are related, but in inbreeding, maybe they're closer, like brother sister. or half brother sister. But I thought that Robert Henderson in 1950, he came out with the definition, and that I just gave, and I thought, man, that explains a lot. So you start out, either you're inbreeding or outbreeding. So are you outcrossing? And I think in the American game, you probably have a lot of that.
A lot of it, yeah.
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 And we have less outcrossing to another breed, but within exhibition poultry, we have a lot of people. I sometimes call it chasing champions, where
Yeah.
this year Bud whoever wins, and everybody wants to get a bird from Bud, and next year maybe Bud wins again, and then maybe a year after that we got Rudolph that wins, and everybody wants to get a bird from them. And the people that are jumping, following Bud and then Rudolph and then who knows what the next year, are really outcrossing. And
I
they're,
call it mongrelization is what I call it, because they
yeah.
got so many bloodlines mixed in it, they don't know what they got anymore.
And in that case, they're pure breed, pure variety, but they're not a pure line.
That's right. Yeah.
And so one has to be careful, because even if you cross two lines, you could say that F1 generation, wow, what great egg production. That was a great cross. Well, no, you don't know anything at F1. You don't even know if it was a disaster if you don't like it. You got to go to F2 or F3. And I prefer F3.
That just tells you what's in them, though.
Yeah.
That doesn't. There's no purity of blood at that point. You know what I mean? They're so far from being a family. It's like funny.
So if we're gonna try to have good egg production, we can make an outcross and maybe get a slightly better egg production, but that doesn't mean we're going to keep it.
No, that's hybrid vigor. That's a one-time deal. It's not inheritable. It's not past the next generation. So, yeah. You're talking about crossing, right?
Yeah. Well, and not even crossbreeding, but we can even do that. There's some.
Well, I mean, outcrossing, same breed, but different lines. Yeah.
Could be same breed, same variety, but yeah. So when you're setting up your matings, kind of try to understand what you got. Because if you're fooling with nothing but F1 crosses, because you crossed whatever, you got 3 different males you bought from 3 different places last year, and you put them over your hens. Now there's a little bit of relation going, but you really don't know where you're going to end up. So you got to go back into a refinement program of some kind.
Yeah.
Which of course is your cup of tea.
Yeah.
And not to take it away from myself. I mean,
no. I'm listening to you and I'm like, like the inbreeding part of it, that's a generalization of inbreeding, but I'm more specific in that, to me, inbreeding's brother and sister, because it's more direct, has a bigger impact. You're trying to accomplish a certain a result. Anything else is just like line breeding. It's very different. It's very specific. It's called something else. And then you got in and inbreeding. I mean, there's all these different methods which can be associated with inbreeding. I just don't look at it that way. I think inbreeding is a very specific thing. I think you're right. I think generalizing them, if you look at the definition and everything, that is considered inbreeding. I just don't, for me, I don't go there. I look at it more specifically as brother and sister, because I look at it as a tool to accomplish what I need to do. I use it as a part of my cleanup process to get me to a point where I have birds worthy of cloning that I can take into the foundation stage and actually create a family and refine them the way I want.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
But I bring up the in and out breeding, not to try to make you uncomfortable or go after anything you're saying, but people really need to start there, I think, with the understanding you're either breeding inward or outward. And that's where the whole term started. And then the misuse of the word inbreeding and line breeding pops up later. And they have connotations. And I don't disagree with you about the finite connotation of inbreeding. Or, in fact, McGraw would tell you that inbreeding is largely brother to sister or half brother to half sister in some of his publications on poultry. So, but for the folks at home, I just want you to understand your flock. If you're going to improve your egg production, understand what each individual's like. I think it's well worth it in your notations to make note if you've made outcrosses, what generation is that individual? F1, F2, F3.
Yep.
Okay. If you're at
Mhm.
F3, you probably know what you've got. And yeah, maybe you can go further than that, but usually by F3, things settle into what you have, assuming you did any kind of reasonable method.
Yeah.
But so, but yeah, I do agree that inbreeding has the connotation of closer inbreeding than line breeding does.
Well, I feel that a lot of people are afraid of inbreeding, and I just think, well, think about it. All these different breeds and varieties we have today. I don't care if it's chickens, ducks. I don't care if it's dogs and horses. They wouldn't exist. Those breeds wouldn't exist if it wasn't for inbreeding in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big fan. I study everything on Robert Bakewell, the father of selective breeding, and he was a
Yeah.
big fan of inbreeding. And once I read that, you know, and even Charles Darwin studied Robert Bakewell to understand natural selection, and even then, inbreeding was a big part of it. So I'm a big fan of inbreeding. I just think it should be used properly with the right birds, and don't do it if you don't know what you're doing, or don't do it if you don't have the right birds to do it with. You know, so but it is a great tool.
Now, uh, another thing that Robert Henderson said back in 1950 that I think is pretty cool is a consequence of inbreeding is becoming more homogeneous. Excuse me, getting a little dry, I think.
That's okay. I'd hand you my water, but I can't get it to the
Yeah, I've
screen. You
got
don't have
one. I've
water?
just been running my mouth too much.
Yeah.
But this is exactly what we're trying to do and why I mentioned something about F1. So you got your flock and you're going to try to make progress. Try to understand what the relationships of the individual birds are, their ancestry. Have some kind of idea of that. And if you don't have an idea, start where you are with what you have, right?
Yep.
Ralph Sturgeon.
That's right.
That I don't care if you ever read his book. All you got to do is read the title.
Yeah. There you
And
go.
yeah, I got mine tucked
I
behind
read
me
it
back
I pick it
there.
up and read it every now and then. The only thing I don't agree with is this breeding program, but the rest of it is it's gold. It actually is gold.
Oh, there's a lot of good there. And more than anything else, there's so many different ways you can approach things. Even if you don't follow somebody's way of doing it, learning what they had to offer and trying to understand it will make you better anyway. Um, we're all, and if you're good at this, you're a perpetual learner, right?
Yep.
But anyway, another thing I wanted to share. This is out in left field. So Dan Young, for those in exhibition poultry, anybody that's into white leghorns, exhibition white leghorn, large fowl, should know the name of Dan Young. And if you don't, you should be ashamed of yourself and go do some research because
Uh-huh.
the entire, and I've had people debate me about this, but I will still put it out there. Uh, the modern type, the modern shape in the American standard was defined by Dan Young's breeding. There were a lot of other guys that were competing with him and some buying birds from him and such. And there's some that had tremendous type by today's standard, more than 100 years ago. And but Dan Young was active up until I think the 1950s, um, and he was the man in white leghorns. In fact, in Madison Square Garden show in New York, where everybody went for the big show, uh, it was Dan Young you had to get past for champion of show, regardless of your breed. And he was very tough. He kept 10 to 12 families of leghorns.
Wow.
And oddly enough, he was a naval guy and very tidy. One thing I read said that he was in submarines, which would put it at the early submarines, ridiculous ones. But be that as it may, he was a Navy guy, and everything had to be tidy and have a purpose, and space had to be used appropriately. And he had all kinds. He lived in New York, had to go through New York winters with these birds. So he had some ideas about how to do all these things. But he had a program for feeding his white leghorns so that they didn't get yellowed out. And a lot of white leghorn guys, if you're out there, I'll toss it out to you. But this is Dan Young's feeding program. Oh, and I should mention, I bring him up too because a lot of the commercial industry, actually, Dan Young was one of the sources that they would get some of his higher egg laying lines to get a start in. And then whatever they crossed with or did after that became their own. But Dan was out there in the beginning supplying egg production birds as well as just exhibition birds. Each family, Dan would say, had to have 5 traits that defined it. So when he looked at a family, what is the family characteristic that individuals in this family all share? And that's so each family had to have 5 traits, and within all 12 families of birds, he had to have everything he wanted to produce the ideal. But Dan's feeding program, his general feed, what he would do is he would mix 1 part each buckwheat, wheat, barley, oats, cracked white corn, and millet. And he'd give a half a handful per bird in the morning. Noon, he would feed 3 parts oats, 1 part millet, and give about a fifth of a handful per bird. They would get mash for 1 hour a day. And then always available to them was water, charcoal, oyster shell, grit, and green vegetables. So it might be leafy greens or cabbage or things like that. But some people wonder, this is the guy that had the best white leghorn showbirds for probably 40 or 50 years in the early part, and whose body type he created ended up being the standard for ideal for American leghorns. So if you're a white leghorn guy and you didn't listen to that, you want to hit rewind. Just saying.
Do you feed like that?
Me? No, I've got my own methods, but I'm not giving that away today. But I still play around with my methods, but I'm pretty happy with some of it. But it doesn't contain some of those grains in there, so I'll.
Is there any more you want to say about the selection of a proper hen for laying, or did we cover that?
I think we've got the hen pretty well covered.
I know you want to talk about the rooster, right?
Yeah. So how do you select a good rooster? So you've got these hens that lay well, and then you just grab the prettiest rooster off the ground and breed to them, and that's going to
it's
work,
funny.
right?
American games, it's the other way around. It's like they pick the prettiest rooster and select whatever hen they can catch. So,
well, for most people, they start with the rooster too. But in this case, we're talking about egg production, right?
Yeah.
So first off, we've got the 3 tests, which is in my book. But you got the ancestry, you got the SIB test, and then you got the progeny test. So with a male, you want to go back and you want to look at what his ancestors are. So if you want to get higher egg production, you want to get a son of a high producing hen and mate it to another high producing hen, or line breeding back to his mother, or maybe all the above. But the male's egg characteristics you can't see too well. But what you can see is the effect of his hormones. So did he mature fairly early? Is he active compared to the other males? Right? So is he going to potentially be virile? Does he act like he thinks he's the king of the world? Now, moderate males can be just as good too. What happens in your episode with Tony Saval, I really loved it when he went into talking about wild behavior in chickens. But I might steal a bit from that in that So if you have 15 leghorn cockerels, because why wouldn't you have leghorn cockerels? And they're running together. A couple of them are going to be higher up in the pecking order, and some are going to be down at the bottom of the pecking order. Now, genetically, are they completely different? Well, we know there's something different in their brains and nervous system, and maybe in their musculature too, but their reaction and stuff that puts them lower in the pecking order than the other birds. Now, if I raise those 15 birds in 3 separate pens and put 5 in each, will the birds that are on the bottom necessarily always be on the bottom? Probably. But will the birds that were in the middle somewhere, and maybe I only know the top 2 and the bottom 2 out of the group. Okay, let's just say that. But if I put them in 3 separate pens of 5, now some of the guys that were somewhere in the middle are near the top. And being at the top means you get better access to the food and water anytime you want, and you're stress less because you don't worry about that guy at the feeder. He has to move out of your way. You don't have to move out of his. Um, so um, if we can raise smaller groups of birds, let's say I'm gonna rule the world. I'm gonna go hatch 1,000 to get that one supremely nice bird. I could ruin it by having too many birds crowding it. It might not be able to compete with a group of 3 cockerels that stay together and fight everybody, and knock them out of the way. And then when I talk fight, we're talking about like just driving away from the food, the just a little picking that cockerels will do at each other. And the same with the pullets. I've got my great pullets, and if I raise 100 of those in a small pen, yeah, maybe by the numbers, I've got enough square footage for them. I always thought commercial standards for square footage were pretty terribly low. I like 10 square feet per bird as a minimum, a baseline, and I like it a lot more than that if I can get it. Um, so if they're crowding each other, they're going to be pecking at each other. Somebody's going to be more stressed there too, not going to be able to get to the food necessarily if a bossy group of hens is hanging out at the food or the water. And so there's where just the flock itself could impact us. But if all things are equal and I've got enough room where they're getting exercise and they have access to food and water, the birds near the top of the pecking order, if they're free of general defects and completely free of disqualifications, those birds are going to probably be my better birds in any situation. And if I can go back to ancestry and say, yeah, I came from a high egg production hen or a great show bird or whatever, uh, that adds to it. Now, if I look at the sisters to these males, what are they like? So if the sisters are jumping into egg production, giving all the little indications that hormone production's coming on and softness, if I keep them, don't breed from them all for a year, and I measure the sisters, now I got more indication whether that male is worth breeding. So you don't have to hold them for a year, but if you get really serious about it, you can whittle some of these things down with observation and then connecting it also to ancestry and sibs. And then once you breed, progeny. How did the offspring come out? Uh, so I think that's an important point no matter what you're breeding for.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm big into making sure that, well, I like to me, the progeny prove the worth of the parents, not the other way around, So the progeny tell me everything I want to know about the parents because it's all going to be expressed in them. They show me everything. It shows me the structure of the bird. It shows me the health of the bird, the behaviors of the bird. They tell me everything I want to know about the parents. And if I don't like what I see in the progeny, then I need to mix up my parents, or I need to change my parents. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Now, in your American games, the egg production, they come out in clutches when they start laying?
What happens is, like mine,
Yes.
they start laying around late February, and they'll lay until May or June, and then they
Mhm.
stop. Okay. Um, so I don't get any eggs during the summertime. Like they're pretty much they're almost stopped. Well, no, they're not. They're actually laying pretty good right now. I'm just not hatching anything because of the kind of year I've had. But
Yeah.
and they usually go in the molt, good shape, come out of the molt. I get them prepared for the breeding season, and then they start laying again around February. That's
Mhm.
that's usually how they do it. You know.
Now, when they're laying, how on a weekly basis are you looking at
Oh, yeah.
5 eggs a week, 4 eggs a week, or do they tend to lay like for 2 weeks real heavy and then slack off?
Well, I don't breed from pullets, so I just collect whatever they get. I don't really pay attention. They're all in a big pen. But as far as my older hens that are a
Yeah.
year or older, um, I'll get like an egg a day until they go into the until they become broody. They go through every time they go to the pause, they want to go broody. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
If I don't want them to go into the pause, I just keep collecting the eggs. But as they get older, like they get 2 and 3 years old, let's say 3 years old, I start getting an egg every other day.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
the thing
And that
I'm
answered
paying
two
attention to.
different questions actually,
Are
because
you talking about clutch sizes?
well, yeah, I'm looking at clutch size as one
So
indicator.
clutch size, I'm usually looking for hens, and this is how I select them. Is I'm looking for right around 12, no more than 14, no less than 10. If I have a hen that does lay less eggs before she goes broody, then I'll get rid of her. I don't want any hens laying more than 14 eggs. You know, some people go, I got 20 eggs, they hatch 20 chicks. To me, that's not a good thing. You don't want it because they'll perpetuate that. They'll actually reproduce, they'll have daughters that'll do the same thing, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking for that 10 to 14 clutch size.
Yeah. So in a case like that, like if I'm looking at my, let's say I've get some modern games and I'm trying to breed them, so that gives a good indicator of what might be an ideal amount of eggs out of them. Uh, the amount that the hen can set on and cover, and
Yeah.
that's a clutch size of 12 to 14. In the case of the 20, she's not going to be able to keep them all
Sometimes I do, but
warm.
I don't want that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not, yeah.
And so now a hen that only lays 5 or 6 and then goes broody, or that's the end of her production for a little bit, that's a completely different thing. And that might not get you enough offspring for selection the way you want them for the numbers that you want.
No. And they'll perpetuate that too. I'll
Yeah.
start, I'll have all kinds of hens doing that if I don't watch it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, see, my experience with a lot of other breeds would say that what you've got there is you got a bird that is being very seasonal, but when they're in production, their body's giving it uh,
Yeah.
a lot of effort. And
Yeah.
then they shut down to do a recovery even before they go into the mold.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like a lot of other breeds, getting them started might be the issue. So, uh, my experience with Wyandottes is that you don't have anything until you get longer days. You start getting eggs before you get fertility, and then all of a sudden you get great fertility. Now, people that put lights on them, you're changing the whole
Yeah.
map
And you
here.
can do
Okay.
that with American games too. I can put lights on them in the winter. I'll get eggs. I just
Yeah.
don't do it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. But and I'm some people love to put lights on their birds.
Yeah.
Little fact here, I don't. I think it's been 18 years since maybe more since I've had any lights on any of my birds to get them to lay. Um, I don't do it. And since I've been here in West Virginia, I very deliberately let them go with a natural cycle. And what I do is I try to keep track in my little notes. I keep little copious notes about things. Maybe some of them I'll never read again, but maybe some. It also helps me remember them when I write it down. I can usually remember the thing a little better.
Right.
Um, so I'll make little notations about the birds that start up earlier in the year. They got no, it's just daylight, and if you know East Coast late winter early spring, lots of clouds. So that kind of reduces the amount of daylight they have access to. But I keep track of that. Um, and I try to help that guide me. I know that if I've got a hen that just lays really well, but she also lays early in the year, that her sons are going to be helpful to get that trait across their daughters. But in selection for some other breed, you may want to improve the number of eggs the bird's laying, and you can sort apples to apples. And once the birds are in production, you can compare. Like I could come over to your house while the birds are laying. You say they're laying now. We could go through them and we can measure capacity, both between the two pelvic bones and the keel bone, the spread there, as well as the spread between the two pelvic bones. And we could get a good bit of insight from that. Besides, actual eggs are useful as well. Um, and feeling how soft and the abdomen is and how fine the skin feels on the birds, because that's all indication of hormones. So if I'm looking for indication of hormones um, in the female, which result in egg production, I want to see that on the male as well, which is often seen in early vigor. A male that's bold, crows. I go out to collect eggs. It's a lot of times it's dark out there. I've got a little flashlight. I wear a little spelunking flashlight, and I go out. I've got this one cockerel from last year. Every time I go through the pens next to him, he crows. I go through a pen, come out, he crows. I go in his pen, come out, he crows. So whaps his wings, snaps them real nice, and throws a crow. He's letting the hens know he is something, right? And that's an indication of hormones. And a male isn't going to have female hormones; they're going to have male hormones. So, the more that he does things like that, the more I see potential indication of hormones. Now, I can also on the male feel the actual keel and pelvic spreads that I do on the female. And just by doing that, I will gain a little better um, progress in the offspring. And then the Buckeye project, that was one of the side results. We didn't focus on egg production because we didn't have enough time for the funding. You got to get the birds up to 6 months lay, then they got to lay for a period of time. You got to make records, and then you got to start breeding. And we grow them up to meat production in 20 to 26 weeks, depending where we were starting. 19 to 26, I think it is. But anyway, get them down to even 16 weeks as it went on. But so meat production we could do quickly, and it matched within the parameters of the funding. But for egg production, we went ahead and selected males for that because you got 4 or 5 males, and that all are making criteria. You might as well pick for that as well and thin them down a little further. And the Buckeyes were laying really strongly for us. If it wasn't for broodiness, they might have laid as well as the Leghorns, but they ate a lot more feed.
Yeah, they're big birds. Yeah.
And so for your males, you can select them just as if they're females in production. For your females, try to compare birds the same age, and try in the same state of production. And if it's not in production yet and you understand why, you can make that exception. But if otherwise, just consider them even. And as I say, when your young birds are growing, watch them, and you can get leg bands to mark them, or you could, if you're not showing, you could get some fingernail polish and paint toenails to give, or even toes, to give some kind of indication to keep track of which bird was which.
Yeah.
I prefer banding, and there are a variety of ways you can do that: wing band, leg bands. But if a bird's really good, they get more than one leg band at my place, and I write down both bands and their numbers and the breeding of the bird and all. And as soon as I see a leg band missing, I go back and reband it.
I
Uh,
cringe when people say a toe punch. I never trust a toe punch. ever.
Yeah, I've had them grow back.
Yeah.
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 But I do toe punch my young birds, but by the time they're getting half grown or so, I start banding.
Yeah.
And but anyway, but you want to look at the birds that are the never challenged by other birds or infrequently challenged by other birds. The male birds, if I'm at a feeder, one of them's going to be clearly dominant. There'll be another one that can stand around when the dominant one walks by and the dominant one doesn't care. There might be two or three like that, but then there's going to be these other guys that can walk by, but if they see one of those guys move towards them, they move out of the way. And then there'll be the guy that has to sneak into the feeder and run away after he's done, or if another bird looks at him, runs away.
Yeah.
And those things are not going to change unless you are able, while they're still growing, to separate them out and take some pressure off.
Yeah.
My buddy Wells LaFawn, it was really good back in the late '80s and the very early '90s, I guess. Um, but he had great dark brown leghorn large fowl. But his trick was, well, the cockerels are growing up. As soon as they started really asserting themselves, he'd pull the top male out of the pen and give him a pen of his own, and or in some cases pull the top two and put them in one pen. And then when the next male asserts itself and becomes clearly the leader, he'd pull him out, and he'd keep doing that. He used to say people never understood why his males would show all the time, and he's like, because they were all kings. They all thought they were the king of the world.
Yeah.
And that's how he did it. Some guys, my mentor's father used to pen two or three males up together. Didn't like to do three because sometimes the two lower males would turn on the more dominant male. But pen two or three males up together and then go do this in several pens. And then when a couple weeks go by, it's time to call birds, he'd cut the number in half. So you might start with three, then he'd cut a whole section out, then he'd be two birds per pen, and then he'd cull again, and he'd be one bird per pen, and by long before fall, he would be down to one bird per pen, and then he might be one bird per two pens. The man would raise 1 to 300 birds a year, and cull down to 5 cockerels and 5 to 10 pullets. Yes. Mr. Holmes, my mentor, he never liked to cull a chicken. He liked to find a home for them all because he saw his father killing birds better than some of his competitors' entire bloodline.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't as good at his place as the birds he kept. I hope we all get to that point, though.
Hagnorn talks a lot about that improvement through reduction by reducing the size of your flock to your best ones, how much progress you can make going forward from there.
High average quality.
Yeah. Potential variation,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
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 But anyway, that's my tricks on the males. The females, I do pay some attention to as well on who's going to be a lead hen. I think it's very useful, and that bird tends to eat better. So
Yeah, I see that pecking order even with my hens, and I start, like you said, I start. It's like when I see a dominant hen, I definitely get them out, mark them. I just don't want a hen that's just picking on everything, just to be picking
That's
on it. It's
right.
like anything that walks by it is trying to kill it. I don't want that, but I want to see the dominance of that hen. Definitely.
Yeah, and the like medium level hens or medium high level in the pecking order, they're all fine. It's really the ones that are on the bottom that never seem to turn into anything
Yeah,
worthwhile.
right. See that too. Was there anything else you wanted to cover before we go into? We only have a handful of questions, but did you want to cover anything before we go into the questions?
I'm good to go. I don't have anything else, I don't
Okay.
think.
Nancy, you want to bring up questions and talk about it? Bring them up.
Yes, here we go.
Uh-oh, we have questions.
We
A few.
do.
We have a few. We have about 6, it looks like.
Okay.
What breeds lay the most eggs per year? Do we know?
That's Nancy.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, you got that one, Nancy?
No,
no,
that's
I
my
mean that she's
question to
asking the
you.
question. Are you the
Uh,
one asking all the
No,
questions?
I
Oh,
have
okay, I'm just
no.
wondering.
There's plenty.
it's commercial leghorns are right up the top. If you're looking from like just a regular hatchery, there are plenty of hatcheries out there that are good. Australorps are usually really high. Uh, Sex links, all your various things. They have lots of different names for them: black pearls and golden comets, and all kinds of various sex links do really well. But breeds, while it's not always about the number of eggs, sometimes it's about the efficiency of turning feed into eggs. Um, so that's a consideration too. And a lot of hatchery birds, I've seen Jersey Giants that are smaller than my leghorns. So they were selected on solely for egg production and fertility, so that they were inexpensive for hatcheries to maintain. Um, so it varies greatly. So I don't know if breed is the right answer, but if you can get commercial leghorns or a commercial hybrid, um, they're going to be set up for egg production.
Okay. I feel like my hen's carrying too much fat, but is it possible that some birds handle nutrition differently? Because I've been feeding the same feed and she lays eggs, just not consistently.
Oh yeah, yeah. So that can be a breed thing. The people that raise speckled Sussex here in America know it pretty well. You can give them just a basic layer ration, and they'll get fat on it. But that was a chicken breed that was solely developed to fatten. And so, yeah, hens will handle it differently. Um, how active the bird is, how much space you have. Do you have an area they even want to explore, or is it just trampled down flat dirt? You could put out, you can make a little thing with some wire across the top and um, some wood boards and plant seeds in there like mustard seed and clover and grasses, and it'll grow up through the wire and they can't rip the roots out, and it'll give them something to peck at. You can put compost in your chicken runs and they will turn it over. So it's not just about what you're feeding, it can be about the exercise level they're getting. But you can have a big old boss hen that all she does is eat. And when you feel that pelvic bone, it feels 3/4 of an inch thick of fat and gristle on there. And she's not going to lay. She's just happy to put her food into it. Now, if the whole flock is like that, then it's what you're feeding. And what can you do to encourage egg production? Okay, you can put some vinegar, preferably apple cider vinegar, in the drinking water. Vinegar tends to help a little bit with dietary issues. You can look at your feed. No scratch. None of your corn and millet and stuff like that. Uh, do like Dan Young does. They get mash in front of them for an hour a day. Let them gorge on it for an hour a day. Take it away. Put some straw in their pen instead of just shavings, and toss a handful of oats in there. Oats are pretty good for encouraging egg production, but you got to limit the calories and you got to give them exercise.
Let me
That's
say
what.
this. I agree with Don that if it's all your birds and you're seeing it affecting all of them, I definitely think that's nutrition. But I would say be careful too, because that's a selection point. And if you're breeding to a hen that's getting fat that easily, and the other ones aren't doing it, then that could be something you want to call out, because you're going to perpetuate that. I get nervous when people want to blame everything on feeding,
Yeah.
and they got to be careful of the genetic side that's there. And I would almost assume, unless it's affecting all the birds, that it very well could be genetic. So,
Well, and it could be neither genetics nor feed. It could be management.
yeah.
Got a little tiny pen. They can't move around. They're bored. Chickens. Jason Pettit, friend of mine, master showman, good, really solid breeder birds. But Jason one time made the comment that he thinks chickens, of all the animals, farm animals, a chicken gets bored the most easily. And they're very inquisitive. That's why they peck at things.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting. I like that.
So anyway, shout
That's
out
good.
to him for that. But I think that's a bit of wisdom I concur with.
There's a lot of little things you say there that all the time that I could steal from, but then I can't remember them all. You know, you got nice little, I love them all. So that's good. So,
Okay. I started with dark red and a light red pair. I'm obviously getting an assortment mix of chicks. Should I go light or dark?
that's up to you. Select one and go with it. Yeah.
Depends
Just
what
know
you're
what,
breeding.
just make sure you
too.
got the right hens or the right cocks. That's all.
I mean, if you're trying to breed light red Rhode Island Reds for exhibition, you're not going to do well.
Yeah.
So, bit of information we don't have in there. But if you're not exhibiting, if you're exhibiting, look at the standard. What's the standard calling for? If you're not sure you understand it correctly, try reaching out to a poultry judge. If you're not going for exhibition, but they're your own birds, breed what you love.
Now, I'll say this: if he's talking about American games, genetic wise,
Yeah.
the going dark mahogany is a lot easier than going light wheaten. That's just the order of can't think all of a sudden, but it would be easier to go dark than it would be light if you're talking about like an American game fowl breed, the duckwing color. Yeah.
But also it stands to go, breed what you love.
Well, let me
as
ask.
well.
Yeah, let me ask Don. You raised both the dark and light brown leghorns, right?
Yeah.
What would you think is easiest, going dark or light for yours? Are they considered a duckwing family?
They're both challenging. To get really good ones is challenging. There's a lot you got to know. I mean, right now, the more judges know what a good light brown looks like than dark brown. I actually had a judge look at some dark browns I sent, and they thought they might have been crossed, blacks and light browns crossed together. They never seen dark browns before, even though the standard gives a description of them. But I do know that Jim Rhines, one of my mentors, he used to have a saying. He said that dark browns eat more and poop more.
Are your birds considered duckwing, or are they considered dark browns? Or
No,
PB
they're not
browns?
crowwing. They're all duckwing.
They're duckwing. Okay.
Both light and dark
what I was
varieties
thinking.
are duckwing.
So he's saying they're American games. Yeah, it's much easier to go to the dark than the light.
Yeah.
Much easier.
Yeah, he's got light male, dark red female.
Okay, well, he's got to make a decision. I think it would be better to go dark in that case and just just weed out the wheatens and get rid of the light birds and just go dark. But he's gonna have to make a decision. And I do think he'll have an uphill battle with the light side. The dark is much easier. It's much easier to go dark. It was with mine, especially. The color group, the order of the color group. I can't talk all of a sudden. The order of colors in the color group, it's always wheaten and then dark red or mahogany. And then you have the order of dominance, which the dark is a lot more recessive than the light. So that's what I'll do then. Okay.
That's what he'll do. He'll trust you.
You'll trust me, huh?
Yeah. Okay, says, hi, Don. This is the same guy that we just answered the question for. Sorry, guys. I'm dealing with some kind of a scratchy throat thing going on here. So my voice isn't here.
I read your section on Harvey Ursery's book about
Ussery.
Ussery, yeah.
Ussery book about incubation. Don't you think that pine sol can hurt the chick's respiratory system? He's talking about cleaning
Okay.
the incubator.
Yeah. So depends how much you put in there. I still use pine sol in my incubators to clean them out and the water for the humidity. But to a gallon of water, I'm probably only putting a cap full and the pine saw I've got it'd probably be half. If I bought real pine saw, it'd be half. Pine saw I've got's a generic, and so it's probably a full cap full of that. It's probably half water anyway. Um, but so yeah, it depends how much you put in there. It could be too much. Yes, I agree, but that's you can smell. You can go by smell on that.
I met Harvey at the Sustainable Poultry Network when I was teaching for them. You taught for them too, right?
Oh yeah, Harvey
Yeah.
and I used to play for about 3 years or something. Harvey and some other guys, Mike, and we'd all get together once a week and play poker.
Oh wow.
But Harvey's a fun guy. He's his gardening is unimaginably good. And anyway, but yeah, real nice
I've been
guy. I
wanting
like
to get
him a
him.
lot.
Yeah, I met him there. He's a good guy. I've been meaning to get him on the show. I hope he's available. I need to call him one of these days.
This would probably be a good question for Harvey then. Unrelated question. So it can wait. He's saying it can wait if this isn't the place to ask it. But I want my farm to be self-reliant and I want to make sure my birds still get good nutrition. How can I learn to grow my own chicken feed and avoid the feed stores?
Yeah, that is something that Harvey worked on for a while. So he probably has a lot of valuable input to it. You can look at a lot of things, but I could tell you go back to Milo Hastings and the Dollar Hen, another little book.
Yeah.
And the crux of his thing was to have your chickens near a railroad so that your eggs could be loaded onto the train easily. Have a stream nearby so that the water would run all year and the chickens get water without worrying about it freezing solid. And then you fed them a mixture of corn and oats. And then in the bins, you kept constantly out beef scrap, which was dried leftover pieces of beef. Used to be readily available, 100 years ago or more, and charcoal and grit and oyster shell. And then, other than that, the chickens ran loose and balanced their diet. Back then, they would have had a manure pile to get into, and there's this whole thing about leaf mold. If you get into looking that up, but Fred Jeffries used to talk about how chickens had access to leaf mold. And we're not talking mold, we're talking about the mycelium that's growing, little strings of mycelium that grow through the leaves as they're wet and they start to rot. And mycelium or fungus tendrils, if you will. And they have some antibacterial properties, so they can be really beneficial to chickens. So you would want compost piles, leaf piles around. They have access to open grass and stuff where they might find insects or mice. So yeah, but Harvey's done some work on that could answer that the rest of the way better.
Tony Seville, he used to feed what looked like scratch, a little bit of grain, a little bit of scratch, and maybe a little bit of pellet. I mean, no, a lot of scratch, some other types of grain, and then pellet. I can't remember what it was exactly, but what he would do is he would go down to the local butcher and get all the meat that comes off the cutting, and the extra meat they usually throw away. They would bag all that for him. And he would throw it. It'd be frozen when he get it. He just throw it in there, and that's where they got their protein.
They used to dry that, and they used it for poultry feeds. You could get it at your local feed mill.
Yeah, and his chickens always look healthy and look good. The flesh and feather was always good. But yeah, he'd have these buckets full of like what looked like scratch for them, essentially, and then he would use the meat for the protein, and they all look good.
I think it was Jason Pettit used to set a minnow trap every now and then and catch minnows and feed minnows to the chickens
Yeah.
to give them a source of fish. But yeah, those are ideas. But you definitely got to get some kind of protein into them, so that for the amino acids.
Yeah.
Okay. Sue's asking, does the male make a difference in producing better layers? We may have
Yes.
discussed that one.
Yes.
Well, it's a polygenic trait. It needs both the male and the mother and the father, so.
And the best indicator of the quality of the male is going to be his mother and his sisters. So if his mother was a terrible layer, but he looks wonderful, he'll impact the daughters, but not in the way you want.
Okay. That was the last question I had starred.
All right.
Awesome. I told Don we're looking at about between an hour and a half. He goes, I'm good with that. Well, we're at 2:10. I held him over way longer than I was expecting.
Well, I'm almost on California time if we keep going. But I'm not in California, so maybe I should get going here.
Well, I appreciate it, Don. I'm glad you came back, and I'd like maybe get you on again. I don't know what topic we'll cover. We'll talk about it, but if you want to come on, you're more than welcome to. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, it was a pleasure and nice seeing both of you.
All right.
Yeah, we'll have to get you back on and have you talk about your stories of your experiences and with the Leghorns and showing and all that bit. Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk
that'd be
about
good.
that. I could tell you some stories of old master breeders I've met over the years. Some of them I might not be able to tell, but yeah, some guys were really something.
Yeah, storytelling time is really fun. That'd be good.
Yeah.
All right.
Appreciate it. Talk to you later,
All right.
Don.
Take
Thanks.
care.
Take
Okay.
care. Hey, so guys, just remember Friday we will not be having a show because it's Good Friday. And I think a week from today, we're going to have an interview with Eminem, right?
Oh, good.
I know it's on Monday. It's the week after Easter. Mike Sayers is coming on.
The day after Easter.
The week after Easter.
The week after Easter.
I think so. Yeah.
All right. So just keep an eye on Facebook and Inside the Breeders Academy, and we'll let you know when we're on next. But we definitely will not be on Friday. So with that being said, everybody have a great Easter. And thanks for being here, Don.
All right. Take care.
Take
Talk to you
care.
later. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.